We are going to listen in while Jeff Moffa, President and CEO at Auros Knowledge Systems, tells us about what's new with Auros IQ. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to share here, and I have the distinct pleasure of reviewing, the bigger changes in the last 10 to 12 months with Auros IQ. It's a fun presentation because I get to review some of the newer and cooler changes to Auros IQ. So let's go ahead and jump in, and I will try to do as many demonstrations as possible because I believe demonstrations are always more fun than screenshots. Okay, so the first one is offline assessment control capability. This one is a bit difficult to demo, so I'm not going to demo this. But we have embarked beginning at the beginning of last year on the ability to do assessment controls in completely offline mode. So it's a fairly big project for us. It's going to take us a little while longer to complete, but the basics of line item style assessments are done, and they can be done offline and brought back online and synchronized back to Auros. So in use cases where Wi-Fi is not available or internet otherwise is not available, assessments on tablets or otherwise in remote sites can be completed. Very excited about that set of functionality. The knowledge processing engine change. So you've seen this particular window in a number of cases in the cool KPAC competition, for example, as well as some of the other presentations have shown this window. So I'm going to go ahead and give you just another flavor for that. What's changed in Auros. Here is a rather typical looking knowledge packet, or some people have been calling them K-packs, that has one of the two different model types in it. This one's what's called a value table model, and it's a parametric one. So when we go to test or evaluate this particular model, we click on the lightning bolt, and we get this dynamic page. So this page is completely different in this year compared to what it was in previous versions. So our design team, led by Jimmy Robleski, has done a great job in redesigning this to be more intuitive. And you can also order the parameters now. The author can order the parameters. It's something that people have been asking for, and now you can do. So if I put in different values, well, let me go back. This one must be 8. And this is new too, how we do this. It's picking it up from the nominal value and giving a suggested value. And if I go ahead and evaluate, you get these 3 rows, which we call qualitative responses. And basically within the model, there are 3 responses that are available, 1 per parameter. That's not always the case, but here it is. And the qualitative response is made up of the name of the relationship, the parameter that's being evaluated, any intermediate values that need to be that are used in coming up with the answer, and the value that's being parroted back or reported. So if this were tied to a digital system, this is the value that is being reported by the digital system. And then the end user messaging that's dynamic that the author can set up to give specific instructions about what's happening. So you can see I intentionally did not meet the preferred block length. And it's telling me the preferred block length is currently, or should be 7.42, but it's currently 3. So one would imagine if I go to the length and I change it to 7.42 on this test screen, we can see that indeed the knowledge model, as processed by the knowledge processing engine, works. And as an author, I now have confidence that when it gets to CATIA, when it gets to the plant floor system, that the model will resolve in the way that I want it to. So this particular screen has been some new functionality added. The layout is very different. I believe it's very much more intuitive. Another thing you can do that's new in this is that you can exclude parameters and their states from participating in the overall roll-up. So each parameter has an output state, 3 of them pass, and it rolls up to a pass. If I had parameters that I want to evaluate, but I don't want them to affect the rolled up state, you can do that now. That's also new. and those would be shown down here. So quite a bit of new things, ordering parameters, layout, excluded stuff. So those are all new in Auros. Okay, let's move on. The next improvement is just the simplest but most highly impactful change we made of the year. I personally find this one as a user of Auros the most useful thing that we've done in a long time, and it's so simple. So what we've done is in most of our screens, the issues grid, the assessment grids, we've created these fly out views for knowledge. So for example, this is an assessment view, and we have a particular line item that we are assessing. We want the details of that knowledge packet, of that issue, of that requirement, of that whatever that item is, it flies out, right? And there's a very nice interaction model with this knowledge. It makes, consuming and diving down into detail from summaries much, much, much better. We do the same thing here with like the header too. So we're doing this in a whole bunch of different places. So this year we've introduced this concept of a drill down flyout. We implement it in many different places. Super simple, super straightforward, but majorly beneficial to the user experience. Okay, wish we'd done that one a long time ago. So next, we've enhanced the assessment experience. I'll talk about this a bit, that we do continue to emphasize assessment. I'm not going to get into this too much, but basically what we've done is we've changed the way the buttons are selected for conformance states, and we've combined them into a much improved user experience versus having radio buttons. It makes this particular paradigm makes clear the evaluated versus unevaluated state, where before we had a button that was specifically said not evaluated. This paradigm, the buttons, you don't need a not evaluated button. You have the options when it's not evaluated, and when you have an evaluation, the buttons get removed and it gets replaced with a drop down, and the color changes. So again, a very small user experience adjustment, but it makes the idea and interaction with these conformance states, at least the manual attestation model interaction with these buttons, much more intuitive. Okay, decision models is the new one. I think we got a ways to go still on decision models, but it's a different type of method where instead of intending to track a process over time, it's optimized to be executed once and quickly. So within the context of a line item sheet, in the context of an assessment, you may need to go through a flow to come to a decision about evaluating a line item. So instead of it being a method that persists over time, it's one that is transient, used in a transient sense, and it's been optimized for that. I'm not going to demo that today for time reasons, but we believe that is a very big improvement in the product. The next change is probably the most complex change that we undertook in the year, and that is the methods redesign. So I know that some of the cool KPAC contestants would, especially Chris, would attest to how big of a change this is. Let me give you a little bit of a demo here. So unless you saw the previous version of method KPACs, it's hard to tell you how different this is. Basically, we tried to recreate all the flexibility of Visio in the previous version, and we found that made it less usable, not more usable. So in the current method redesign, the shapes that you have to select from are imbued with typing, meaning a basic step has a certain set of features and has this shape. A decision has this shape and a certain set of features. So when you actually are constructing a method by dragging and dropping shapes onto a canvas, they are already imbued with a bunch of the features that you're intending to have, instead of having to configure all that all at once. So a basic shape obviously is pretty basic. When you complete it, you go to, here's a decision model. And if I answer the question, we can go to the next level, we can complete it. We can dig into details if we want to. and let's just go ahead and complete the process. Okay, you get the idea. So the change really is in how much we rely and create definition based on the specific shape. Before, there was no definition based on shape, and that automates a lot of the process. There's also a fairly significant visual enhancement here in the layout of and readability based on colors and shapes and design cues. So big change to methods. If you used them before, they were good, but I believe this was a significant improvement. Okay. The next one, I won't demo this one. It probably isn't appreciated by everybody, but the people who needed this appreciated it a lot. And we used to be able to have reports based on the line items within an assessment, the individual KPACs, how they're being scored, how to count them, how to categorize them, how to status them. But we found that there was quite a few use cases where we didn't want to count the contents of the assessments, but the assessments themselves. So that is now a core feature of Auros. So you can, all the things that you used to do, counting and categorizing and bar charts and pie charts and count reports and stacked stuff. I mean, all those kinds of analyses that you did based on the contents of a set of assessments, now you can do just counting the assessments themselves. I personally use this feature quite a bit. This next one is very useful for issues management, but it's useful in a lot of other ways, and it's relative timing of the issues reports. So I'm going to do a demonstration for you here. In previous versions of Auros, and you were searching for issues, some of you may know there's lots of different ways to search. You can search by filter, by keyword, by ID. Here's my filter search. And let's say I wanted to look for defects created by, say, Kurt Domke. And I used to have to pick, or I didn't have to, I could just do a search. But if I wanted it based on a date range, I would have to pick a beginning and an end date or a beginning date and do a search, which is fine. But if you wanted to just save the report and just said, like, just show me today's issues, the ones that were closed today, or the ones that were, opened today. And then I just click on, if I save the report and I want it to always be today and not have to pick a different day every time, you need relative timing. So I'll do Kurt for this year. And if I saved it, then I wouldn't ever have to change the dates. It's always giving me the results of the issues raised, or excuse me, not issues, but the defect issues raised by Kurt this year. So Kurt has raised 49 issues. It's computing the date range as it's run today, but if I save this report, it's saving the idea that I wanted, this year, that I wanted this relative time frame, so I don't have to pick dates all the time. I just pick the relative date, and it's always good for what I want. So people who are running the same reports based on date over time, this is extremely useful for issues. It's a common feature. You can see all the different kinds of relative dates we did for this release, and it's fairly extensive. Okay, the last one I will go through for this year. I mean, there's many others, but the one I wanted to talk about last is the idea of how we're doing in treating Kanban boards. So let me go ahead and bring a team board over. And we haven't talked about team boards a whole lot this conference, but it's a big part of what we do. And the idea is that the team board is a one-stop shop for a team to have the relevant issues, the relevant assessments, the relevant methods, and the relevant reports all in one spot. So if we go to the enhancement that I'm talking about today, it's how we're treating the Kanban boards. So a Kanban board, for those of you who maybe not are familiar, are visual representations of track to close of things, right? So issues, work deliverables, work items, whatever it is that you want to track. Made famous by some Japanese manufacturers, but Kanban boards are regularly used in software development and basically any project where you want to limit work in progress. So across the top are columns that represent different phases of the work. So this is our this is really our information security management system, or ISMS. These are real issues that we are working on. We got quite a backlog, and you can drag and drop these cards from column to column as you're working on them, and you can visualize the work in progress. Now, the Kanban board isn't new this year, but the visualization improvements in track to close are. So it's much easier to work with columns. Let's say I wanted to see more of these, I can expand it. Let's say I did not want to see, this particular stage, I can collapse it. Let's say I don't want to see the big detailed cards. I wanted to see, a more summarized view of those cards. Or if I just wanted to go to plain old vanilla grid view, where, sometimes, working in grids are extremely efficient too, when there's lots of different things. So there's a fairly significant change to the visualization of Kanban boards, and it's also true for the assessment Kanban board. So this is the Kanban boards, not of issues, but of assessments. So this is a single assessment control with 23 knowledge packets that are getting evaluated and the summary of their status. And we can do all those same things, right? We can, look at them and, expand the column so we see more at once. We can go into the summary views of these, or we can go into grid view. So Kanban boards, not new, but the visualization to improve the ability of the board to track to close, that's what's new. Okay, so that completes what was accomplished in the last 8 to 10 months in Auros. Quite a bit, and I left out quite a bit too. So what most people are interested in this session is, hey, what are you guys working on? Where is this product going? Where's this technology going? We are following the vision of knowledge aware. We firmly believe in the independence of the idea of knowledge aware, and Auros, our technology, is really just an attempt to bring that vision to life. So the autonomous application provisioning and application tracking of trusted knowledge within the flow of work is the vision. So one of the things we have as a primary category of investment in the technology is artificial intelligence. And specifically, we have introduced this idea of learning cycles. It is a very new and raw concept. There are features in our software, but we believe there's a lot of work to be done on learning cycles. And we're trying to automate that feedback loop from how knowledge was used and gathering that data and producing insights about what can we know, what does the data suggest was learned by how that knowledge was used. And I believe that the technology is there to do this, and that's why we're currently working on completing and refining this concept. The document ingester, Steve Voiser did a good presentation yesterday on the document ingester. It continues to evolve and find new uses. And so we're going to continue to work on the document ingester, which is fundamentally based on several different AI type techniques. And one that we have not started yet is called process mining. Process mining is a statistical and AI technique for looking at process data. How long did things take? What steps didn't take? What steps did take? And using AI to predict risk, to predict timing problems, things like that. And there's a whole science out there. I invite you to look, Google search for process mining. Again, we have not really started actual development, but we have been researching process mining for some time, and I do see that playing a fundamental part of what we're doing. And that I hope will lead to autonomous risk detection. Okay. Second, I mentioned yesterday that one of the big changes in knowledge aware is the realization that you really need to start with assessments. The idea of where does knowledge need to be, and then think about how knowledge is going to get there. But where's that key decision? What are the parameters there? And then invite people to participate in the process of communicating with that decision through a pull technique of knowledge. So our assessment focus means we're going to do more with assessment offline. We're going to do something called assessment types. We've actually started this, which will mean, and I know that some GM folks will be very happy with this, is you'll have different assessment types and configurations of assessments within a community because right now the workaround is to create a different community for the different assessment type. And various things on assessment usability. We're hyper-focused on assessment usability and have conceived of re-architecting assessments to have a different version that are much lighter weight for lighter weight use cases that could take advantage of it. And then the last thing I will say that we are, focused in on in future development is this idea of autonomous knowledge processing. You've probably heard me mention this many times. It's a fundamental element of knowledge aware, of being able to having knowledge flow to the places where it's needed and automate the application of knowledge and feedback of that knowledge. So we have been working hard this past year and have some more upgrades planned for the knowledge processing engine. The thing that understands what a knowledge packet is, can read the model, compare it to a context, and provide these qualitative responses. So there's some work we're doing there, including abstracting the knowledge processing engine out completely. Some of you mentioned, well, is there latency? Well, if the knowledge processing engine, just the engine, can be placed with the client, with the CAD system, with the remote site, the processing of the knowledge packets, the fetching of the knowledge packets can happen once, and the processing against changing context can be continuous. And then there's no issue of latency whatsoever because you're not going back and reading a database. We're seeking to simplify how easy it is to manage a provisioning process. It is manageable today to do very complicated provisioning broadly, but I think there's opportunity to simplify it further, make it easier. And we will continue to work on the pre-building connectors to make this knowledge, autonomous knowledge processing without, coding at all. But as we mentioned, there's already an NX connector and other connectors available, and we will continue to work on more of those. Okay, I'm a bit ahead of schedule, which is a good thing. Does anyone have questions regarding the future or past or enhancements to the Auros IQ product?
I believe Susan had a question. Hearing a little echo. She said, excited to see the offline assessment. Is that controlled by the user? They determine if they pull it offline, sync later, or is that set at an admin or creator level?
Yeah, there is a bit of admin setup, but it's the end user who says, I'm going to take the assessment offline. They take it with them, on a tablet or a laptop or whatever, the mobile or just a tablet or laptop for now. And they can take multiple assessments offline at once. They can take 5, 6, 10, and they can decide once they're back on a network which ones sync. So it is that end user, that evaluator, so to speak, that is controlling when the assessment gets taken offline and when it goes back online.
Okay. Daniel just asked, what about software development process integration?
Yes. It really depends on. We use it for our own software processes extensively. The question is back the integrations back to other software tools that do automated testing, for example, tools that contain test suites and validation. We have done our own connectors into things like AWS services, scanning tools, other tools that automate regression testing. We've written our own. We haven't really made those commercially available, but Auros IQ, as we call it a knowledge operating system. No one knows what that is yet, but we believe it's a class of software that provides services to the enterprise, knowledge services to the enterprise. If you are that, then providing services to any interfaces for making connections like the software development tools is of the utmost importance. So Auros IQ comes with a full set of REST styled APIs to do integrations as you see fit. So to answer the specific question, I can't answer it specifically because I'm not sure what you have in mind when you say integration into software processes. Other than that, we do that, the testing to automate regression, stuff like that.
Okay, very good. And you see
So
Darwin's
that's exactly it. Sometimes parameters are needed, and sometimes they want to show the status of a parameter, but they don't want it to affect the overall output state when the knowledge packet model runs. And so it's there, it's useful, and now you can exclude it from the roll-up state, which then is tied to the conformance state that you see in the assessment.
Okay. Just had another question come in there. Do you want to just read through that?
Is there something in place to deal with the new laws in China forcing data to be created and treated and stored in China without leaving the country? That's a tough one, Carlo. We do have the ability to host for customers in any location, but not China. So the data for any instance of Auros currently is required to reside in a single repository, the location of which Auros really doesn't care, but it does have to be in a single place. So for example, General Motors, I know Carlo works at General Motors, their current instance is not in China, but they have partners that have Auros that are in China, SAIC, and their data is in a database in China.
Okay.
But there's no magic there. Who can exclude a parameter in a value table? It's just the author. So the person who owns the rule, the heuristic, or the knowledge packet creates the value table, which is the model, and they define whether an individual parameter that has an output state will or will not affect the roll-up of the entire model. So it's not the end user at the consumption side cannot do it. It's totally the discretion of the knowledge architect, the domain expert.
Okay.
Great. I'm hoping that was the answer you were looking for.
Hopefully. I do not see any further questions. I do hear that echo though, so thank you, Jeff. Yeah, wrap up, please.
If you will give me an opportunity, I would just like to say a couple things about I got to look at my notes here. So about today's conference. It occurred to me that our presentations came from a variety of locations, right? So it started with Darwin Peterson from Spirit Aerosystem, and he showed us a very real process where knowledge is being captured in knowledge packets and presented on production floor to tell you what torque to put on a piece of to torque a fastener of some kind, and its connection to manufacturing execution systems and the time scale that they did it and the time scale that they're deploying and the scale that they're deploying it. So that's a production use. Following the knowledge-aware concept, knowledge can be authored in one spot, and we know it's going to show up on the plant floor without having to separately wire it. Once there's a knowledge packet, the criteria, the abstraction carries it to the plant floor. Next, Sandalwood. I'm very glad that they agreed to present today because they offered a glimpse of knowledge-aware just to business processes, and their use of using Auros very much mirrors what we ourselves, Auros Knowledge Systems, does with Auros. Josh showed you how many different places. I can't even remember what the number is now. It's like 45 different use cases for using knowledge-aware, using assessments and knowledge packets to do better job in our business process. So non-engineering, and we very much value Sandalwood as a business partner and thank them for presenting. Then we got to the cool CAPEX competition, and I personally think all of them should have won. But it's also interesting that Susan is in manufacturing, Darwin is in production, and Chris is in product development. So you had three different, that wasn't designed, it just happened, a production knowledge-aware kind of concept, a manufacturing engineering concept, and a product development kind of concept. And we also included both of the at least the Auros specific knowledge model types, the method and the value table. And we saw two really interesting value tables that were hopefully did not make people wonder how complex it can get, because once you understand value tables, they're pretty straightforward to deal with. Then we've got to the General Motors presentation, and I'm very happy, that GM agreed to present with us about the CAD connection. I don't want people to think it's knowledge aware is all about CAD connections, but it is about this autonomous flow of knowledge to the flow of work and automating how knowledge flows. And if we all agree that, once we see that happening, it makes the reason for wanting to create knowledge much, much stronger. The desire to create a knowledge packet is only there because I understand that if I create it, it's going to communicate with every design team. It's going to be more efficient, and I'm going to get feedback, and I'm going to know about it. Whereas if I just put it on a document, I'll never know. So, GM's success with implementing this kind of concept with CAD is a compelling one, and it reflects the reality of the situation, that it's something that it can be done today, and it represents the future of how knowledge gets deployed. That's my summary for today, and I thank all of those presenters and cool KPAC contestants for volunteering your time, your expertise and experience with the knowledge aware community.